Perfect. Well, thank you so much for having me and for hosting this DAO summer. It's exciting to see all the threads continuing to weave. And yeah, I guess I'm here to talk a little bit about my experience building what is probably the first and probably the only proper Web3 enabled regenerative village in the world, which is called Traditional Dream Factory. And yeah, actually, I would love to get a little bit of context what everyone would like to get out of this call. I know Eve, you already know the project a bit. I don't think anyone else here has visited, but happy to maybe just in a few words, if everyone can just introduce yourself and say maybe what brought you to this call and what you're hoping to get out of it, and then I can tailor a little bit my presentation toward that. And maybe I'll pass it to Eve, and yeah, if we can just keep it like super short and sweet. Yeah, maybe just who are you and what are you interested in from this call specifically?
Yeah, sure. I'm Eve. I am in New York. I'm in Brooklyn right now. I had the opportunity to visit TDF a couple times in the last year. I stayed there for 2 or 3 weeks. And yeah, the project is really amazing. It's on amazing land. And it's a really beautiful community. So now that I'm back here in New York, I'm working with Tony, who's also on the call. We're working on a project called Build City. So just excited to be here and connect with other local DAOers. So yeah, good to see you, Sam. Thank you.
Oh,
I'll pass it to Tony.
Perfect.
Okay, I'll pass it to Tim. If anybody else wants to share, go ahead.
Yes, I can share. So yes, my name is Saskia. I am currently in Amsterdam, and yeah, I work as an urban designer, and yeah, so I'm interested in regeneration for a while, and I'm trying to regeneration of cities, but of everything actually on this planet, and yeah, I feel a bit well, I feel the potential of DAO, but I feel that I miss some knowledge to actually understand how yeah, how it's how I could use it for certain projects. And so yeah, so that's why I'm here, to understand more the applications of Web3 and tokens and all of those. Yeah, thank you. And I pass it to Christy.
Hi, good morning. I'm Christy. I am one of the organizers with Ethereal Forest. So thank you so much, Sam, for kicking us off here. I'm just really excited to start better understanding the landscape of Web3 regen projects like yours, and see what we can learn and bring into the city context.
Thank you. And maybe Diogo, if you're around.
Yep. Thank you. Thank Terry Forest for hosting this. And I'm Diogo, speaking from Brazil, and really curious to have this deep dive into the experience of traditional gym factory. Thank you, Sam. Sorry about the noise. We have the pizza watching TV. Thank you.
Thank you. So I think there was anyone else that wants to say hello? Oh, Elizabeth? Yeah.
I will say hello. I'm in Northern California in the South Yuba River watershed, and I'm here to explore. Very interested in DAOs and looking for, like Saskia, looking for learning more and exploring options in terms of also sort of exploring holochain, which I find interesting. So yeah, just absorbing and working with third global south in terms of or community organizing. So looking for how it might apply specifically to that in terms of bringing underserved communities sort of into the Web3 world. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. And Tim has a hand raised. Go ahead.
Hi, everyone. My name is Tim McCormick. I'm joining from Portland, Oregon on the U.S. West Coast at the confluence of the Willamette and Columbia Rivers. And I am a researcher and builder and sort of life explorer focusing on alternative housing and mobile dwelling and homelessness. And particularly interested in like cooperative and limited equity and community land trust models, how they come in here. Thanks. Anyone else who hasn't gone?
So Jordan just hopped in. Jordan, if you want to just say hello and anything you're interested in hearing today, and good to have you here.
Yeah, great to see you again, Sam, and hi everyone. Sorry, I have my camera turned off today, but I am Jordan. I do a number of things that sort of bridge planetary health and community mobilizing and the Web3 space, including stewarding the Planet Health Network and doing some health financing work at Unix here. I met Sam through Planet Health and also visited Traditional Dream Factory. So I just saw that this was an event that I could attend, and I just wanted to listen, check in and see what Owasso was up to and connect with the community and really great sort of schedules coming up. So yeah, connection, learning, support, and more. So yeah, back to you, Sam. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And welcome, Hang. You just hopped into the room. If you want to introduce yourself and maybe share anything that you want to get out of this session, and then we'll get started.
Oh, sorry, I'm just trying to listen what you're discussing.
All right, no worries. All right, so thank you all for joining, and good to see some familiar faces and some new faces and all of that. So yeah, for a little bit of background about myself, I am French and Danish originally. I lived in the US for a while. I was working in tech for about 10 years, or I guess I'm still somehow involved in tech and building tech products. But since 8 years or thereabout, I've been starting a journey of leaning into how we can build more modern living spaces that integrate technology and that supplement nature and enhance nature. And so, yeah, my story is kind of going from like the typical corporate work into transitioning to Game B, to a new civilization, and to seeing how we can leverage technology in order to create planet positive effects. I have a few slides that I will share a little bit just to get a little bit of background. It's quite generic because I never really know how deep people want to go and all of that. But I'm super happy to at any moment just like stop and dive deeper into something. I can also hop into like live demos or whatever. Basically, Traditional Dream Factory is a project that I founded about 4 years ago. Is a regenerative village based in Portugal, and we have been experimenting with leveraging Web3 in order to establish a common treasury, a common governance protocol, and yeah, just basically leveraging technology to create a new form of commons, so putting land into common ownership and decentralizing the access and the governance of those lands. And hopefully the slides will help a little bit guide through that explanation, but also feel free to just interrupt me at any point and we can dive into things more specifically. All right. So yeah. Now, how do I put it in the view? Here we go. All right. So first, I just want to give a little bit of background about what do I actually mean by regenerative or by regeneration, because it's a word that's been kind of misused, not as much as sustainability, but it's slowly getting there, and the corporates are starting to take it over and so on. In my definition of regeneration is really keeping it very simple. Regeneration simply means creating the capacity to hold more life. And when I say more, it's more in terms of quantity, like how many elephants, but also quality. What is the quality of life for those elephants, and how much diversity are we covering, like a broad area of life, or are we just trying to replicate one specific type of species at the risk of damaging the ecosystem as a whole? And this diversity and quality of life is actually what creates the resilience of life. It's by having a symbiosis of species and ecosystems that talk to each other. And yeah, just a little reminder, our current paradigm is not in symbiosis with nature. The current economy and so on has made it so that we're basically desertifying the planet. We're pumping greenhouse gases into the atmosphere and all of that. And the dream that we're aiming towards is how can we create a solar punk civilization? So a civilization that's leveraging technology to become a keystone species and to actually enhance nature in terms of creating the capacity to make more life flourish in terms of, yeah, again, diversity, quality, and quantity. And so one of the things that's kind of in the background for us as we're building these regenerative villages that are technology enabled is this idea of a nature-backed economy. And so that's the whole concept of refi, regenerative finance. And basically a nature-backed economy means that every time you're producing more life, you are printing more money. So as opposed to the current paradigm where we're printing more money when we usually tend to destroy more life. For example, if you want to produce money out of a tree today, you would have to cut the tree and sell the timber, for example. And so you get a one-time value output from that tree, but you completely neglect all of the life-giving benefits that that tree was providing, because trees, just like any natural species, have been optimized to enhance its local ecosystems, and it creates so many ecosystem benefits from storing water, storing carbon into the ground, and all of that. And so the idea is, how can we actually build an economy that tries to take that into consideration? So one of the topics that we've been trying to develop, and that I guess that's the main thesis behind the prototype that we created, is what if we could transition ownership into stewardship, meaning that transitioning the
Na boca, carai.
well, hello there, Ray. And I'm just taking the comments here. And so, yeah, so basically, how can we transition from this idea of ownership, like I own a tree, so therefore I have the right to cut the tree and to sell the timber. That's my native right, because I hold the property. And this sense of ownership actually comes from our Latin roots, which probably derive from somewhere before that. And the right of ownership is the right to use, the right to get the fruit of, and the right to destroy. So that's literally how our whole economy is based on, is private property, which is derived from this kind of definition of ownership. And if you look at more ancient civilizations and indigenous tribes all around the planet, they tend to not have the sense of private properties that Western civilization has had, and they tend to see more sense of stewardship. And so stewardship means the right to care for and the right to get the fruit of. And so that doesn't mean that if you own a piece of land that you're not enabled to benefit from it and to make your own sustenance from it, but it means that you are going to be trying to care for it, rather enhancing that natural system in order to produce the benefit that you want, but not by destroying it. And so how does that then start to look when we start to build in technology into our stack? So,
Alô, Maria Clara quer falar.
que nós vamos fazer esse em inglês, mas próxima vez podemos fazer em português.
Está uma merda.
So, so one of the aims of our project is to try to encode and some of these natural benefits, so growth of ecosystem benefits that we can create on land assets. So if you take a piece of land and now if we can encode through technologies, for example, the total biomass growth and the total growth in amount of species that interact with this land, or tracking how much water is retained on this land, how do we actually enhance those local water cycles? That is like the first primitives that we want to achieve. It's like show we can actually leave a positive trace on nature. And this is what ReFi in general is doing, regenerative finance. You have all of these protocols that we then try to leverage. For example, Open Forest Protocol. It's decentralized monitoring and reporting, which means that basically it's a marketplace that connects big data, satellite companies, and stuff like that to land stewards, people who are on the ground planting trees and trying to leave a positive trace. And so TDF, for example, Traditional Dream Factory, is a land steward. We are managing a certain area of land. We are reforesting those lands. We're planting a food forest and these type of initiatives. And so therefore, we are actually leaving a positive trace in terms of the capacity for life to sustain itself on that plot of land. We're growing the amount of carbon that we're sequestrating. So that is one very measurable and tangible outcome. And that is proved through Open Forest Protocol. So through the Open Forest Protocol platform, we're able to track every 6 months in the first 2 years, and then every year after that, we are taking photos and we're reporting on each of the trees that we planted in different sample plots. And that means that we can get an estimation of how much carbon we actually stored in our land. And now that means that can have a monetary value if there's a global carbon market for it. Biodiversity and water retention is things that will come in the near future. There is no very tangible metrics and ways to quantify that yet, but there's a lot of projects that are working on creating, ways.
Excuse me.
Ray, if you want to share something, or are you just trying to interrupt?
Shimmy, shimmy, I, shimmy, I, shimmy, yo.
Okay, I think that was an interruption. So where was I? So basically, some of the steps that we are then working on is how do we want to then quantify those benefits? And well, TDF is just an example of a regenerative finance project where we are just specifically based in the scope of a village. So it's providing living units, like spaces to live, spaces to work, food production, and these kind of things. And one of the frameworks that has emerged over the last couple of years, which shows a lot of potential for just simplifying the ways that we can talk about ecological benefits, is the ecological benefits framework. And so those are based on like 6 simple words, like air, water, biodiversity, equity, carbon, and I forget the last one. But we're basically falling into a lot of those categories because we're trying to build a regenerative paradigm from the ground up. So at the scale of a village, we're not trying to do something super massive, but on the scale of a village, how can we leave a positive trace? So we're implementing regenerative agriculture, which means that we're enhancing the soils rather than depleting them as we are growing food. We're building a water retention landscape, which through having swales and lakes and so on means that we can actually capture more water into the landscape and redistribute it throughout the year, because in Portugal, in our region, you have about 6 months without any rain at all. So from May to November, it's very, very rare to get any single drop of rain landing on our land. So it does make food growing and these kind of things quite challenging. And everywhere around the world, we're seeing more and more disparate weather patterns, basically. So I think one of the challenges of our time is really to create these kind of water retention systems, getting more forest cover so that we can retain more water into the land and really optimize the resources that we get without bringing so much external output. We're creating steward ownership by enabling our community to purchase a token that gives them access to these lands, but where this token encodes certain ecological principles into the use of the land. So we wrote what we call the regenerative land stewardship principles, which you can find on our website. Actually, I'll link it here if you want to see on the WhatsApp website. And those principles include things like 50% of the land is to be rewilded. Only 5% of the land can be built on. We are enforcing regenerative agriculture principles. We are preventing having, for example, single-use plastics or pesticides or fungicides. And so by simply taking part in our economy, you are shifting into a steward ownership of land, meaning that you're here to care for the land and not to extract from it. And I already mentioned that we're tracking carbon capture and that biodiversity is something that is coming up next. And for biodiversity, we're going to be working probably with Simplex DNA. We had some conversations with them, but they basically enable you to track through eDNA samples all of the species that interact with your land by, for example, giving a sample of a water body that's on your land. You can actually see all the species that have interacted with your land. And so that means that eventually we'll be able to have models that can quantify and measure how a certain project is affecting biodiversity. But so on top of this natural layer, then in our case, we have a housing and infrastructure layer. So basically, you have nature. Within this nature, we want to create spaces for humans to thrive. And so we are producing food, where you run your startup or be productive in the Western civilization sense of it, with like a co-working space, makerspace, all these kind of things. And we're providing with housing that is, well, first of all, that is appealing to live in, that we want to live in, because that's the reason why we're building it in the first place, but also that are low footprint. Concrete is one of the highest carbon emitters on the planet, and we have so many construction technologies that are emerging that are enabling us to build with a low impact and to build more resilient homes. And this is a bit what we are building at TDF. So you can see on the right, you have a map of the whole village. We have basically 1,500 square meter co-living development, which includes cafe, makerspace, co-working, and so on. But then we also have a co-housing development. And you can also see there's like about 3 lakes that are planned. We built the first one this year, so we did some excavation. We built the first lake, and all of those lakes are basically going to be filled from rainwater that lands on the land in the winter season that we can then retain to cultivate throughout the whole year. And then in the middle of all of that, we have a massive food forest of about 10,000 fruit trees on 7 to 8 hectares of land. And that means that we're actually able to not only enhance biodiversity and carbon capture, creating a more like a microclimate in the area, so we don't have to be so hot in the summer when it's like 40+ degrees in Alentejo, but you can be in the shade of trees and you can be around a lake. But also we can produce a lot of food, and this can be an example of how we can create food sovereignty in places that even have very low amounts of water in the summer. But the final layer, and what I'm going to be a bit more focused on today, since that's why he came, is, well, so on top of all of this, now we have nature at the bottom, which we have housing and infrastructure on top of that, which is spaces for humans to congregate, to work, to live, to play. But then on top of that, we have this digital infrastructure, which we have been pioneering, developing, and basically taking all the innovation that's been happening in the Web3 space over the last 4, 5, 7 years, and trying to apply that in the real world. And so far in the Web3 space, it's been quite fickle. Like there is not so many examples of actually using Web3 in the real world. So I think a lot of people get quite excited when they hear about TDF, because they're like, yes, finally something that's creating tangible, real value, where you can actually come and be part of an ecosystem, and you can actually leverage your Web3 tokens towards some real world benefits. And so in order to start to apply this to the real world, we had to devise a couple of primitives. So basically TDF has a DAO, which is a decentralized autonomous organization, which is a governing body, which basically enables you to have a governance protocol that all the members of the organization agree with, and that when you want to change something in the organization, that is where you have to have it approved. So our DAO basically encodes things like, what are the rules of the game? How do we play together in this space? And it can decide on things like, how do we evolve the master plan? So I was describing before that we have this co-living development plan and co-housing and lakes and all these kind of things. And so if we want to evolve that, and when the residents move in and they want to change what's being built, well, now they have a governance tool that they can actually use to coordinate and to agree on what to build and how to develop the game. And what's interesting about our model, as opposed to what eco-villages tend to do, well, eco-villages have historically not been very good at creating governance mechanics. A lot of eco-villages don't have a governance protocol at all. Like, they're just operating on, well, generally on how do the founders view the project, and like they kind of hold a lot of power in it. Or sometimes it can be structured as, for example, a cooperative or an association or whatever. But each of these come with downsides. And the reason why we built out this kind of stack was, well, we want to have members. Well, we want to have the game to be fair, but we don't necessarily want all humans to be equal within the game, because the goal of this game is to optimize for the common resources that sit beneath it. So to optimize for the regeneration of nature, and to optimize for the housing infrastructure evolving in the ways that we want to, and so on. And so basically we devised these 3 primitives. So the first one is a native community token. So it's very simple in our case. It's 1 token is 1 night per year forever. So if I buy 30 TDF tokens, I can go to TDF 30 nights every year for the rest of my life. And whoever holds the private keys to that wallet, meaning your children or whatever in the future, would be able to have access as well. So we can basically encode the main utility of real estate, which is to be able to live in it. as opposed to the speculative aspects of it. But so that's kind of what we encoded in it. It's that you can actually come and spend time in it. But then the two other primitives that we devised is proof of sweat and proof of presence. And they're pretty much what they sound like. So proof of sweat is how much work did you put into the project? Meaning that if I'm spending my full-time job, like working in the village, I should probably have more context about making the right kind of decisions for the project. We can be more governance weight in terms of making decisions. And the proof of presence is simply how much time do you actually spend? Because in theory, you could just buy some tokens, but never come and spend time there. So then why should you be making decisions if you're not on the ground and actually living that reality that you're creating? So yeah, so those are the kind of three primitives that we created. And the idea is that with those primitives, now we can go to any land-based community in the world and offer them a much more coherent set of governance primitives. Imagine if democracy wasn't based on one member, one vote, like all democracies today. But if it was actually based on your real participation in that local ecosystem where you're based. So like if you could vote in your town because you actually spent time there, or if you could vote for your president because you actually live in that country and you believe in that unit of governance that a nation is. But rather, like today, like when you vote for president in your country, it's probably in some nation state where maybe you're living, maybe not, especially if you're a digital nomad or more like a global citizen, then it doesn't really apply. So this is kind of an attempt at bringing technology to contextualize and make governance more pertinent to the decisions that you have to make. A little bit more about the tokenomics of how we structured it. So I mentioned earlier that one TDF token is one night spent per year forever. So basically what we did in order to determine the total number of tokens was simply to say how many nights are available every year. So it's probably a bit hard to read there for you, but on the left here, the first graph, basically we just calculated how many rooms do we have, how many tokens we need to use for this type of room, and that gives us a total number of tokens. So here it says 15,870. Basically, that's your total supply of tokens. And then we just took the total cost of the project, so the cost of acquiring the land, of doing the land developments, of setting up the legal structures and the technology and so on and so on. And roughly in our case, it's something around 3.5 million, the total cost of development of this village. And so when you divide the total cost by the total number of nights, that gives you the initial token price. In our case, that's like 222 euros, I think it was. And then basically we put that price and we put it into a bonding curve, which you can see on the lower left. And so basically for every token sold, the price of the token goes up by a little bit, which means that we have this buffer between if we had taken just the project at cost and then sold that amount of tokens, but instead we're going to be raising a bit more, like probably around, I think it's about 20% extra that we have as a safety reserve. And that's like just extra assets that the DAO holds at the end of the project and that they can decide to build other things with, whether it's like building more infrastructure, regenerating more land, buying more land, acquiring more whatever. That all goes into the kind of pool of commons that sits inside the project. Yeah. Just briefly, our membership model, basically, now we have this token, which is publicly available on the internet for anyone to purchase and eventually to transfer. Right now, it's the tokens are locked for the initial period up until the construction is completed. But then we also wanted to have a mechanism to basically limit the access of these token holders so that only people that have a cultural alignment can actually gain access to the space. And so the way that we did that was by setting up a membership structure where if you're a member, that means that you're one of us. You are like, TDF is one of your homes. and you should be able to access it at any time. And by holding the token, that's enough for you to prove that you have a stake in it and you can come and spend time there. And so token holders have the priority to book, and members can book instantly, like without supervision. So you don't need to have anyone reviewing you, whatever. If there's available spaces, you can book your room. But if you're someone new, someone who just a stranger from the internet, who you can still buy some TDF tokens because you believe in the vision. But then if you want to actually come and use them, then there's a bit of an approval process where you have to submit a booking request. So similar to Airbnb, where you can submit a booking request versus having instant book. If you're not a member, then you can just submit a booking request, and the space host can decide to accept you or not. Yeah, and then I mean the membership is also a little bit how we structure our decision-making processes. So members have, for example, access to chambers where we discuss proposals and kind of some of the DAO infrastructure where you can, just debate and be more part of the governance and so on. Even though Snapshot is where the final vote go, but Snapshot is not really the place to debate or to add more ideas. It's just to get the final stamp of approval, and so everyone has access to vote on our Snapshot. So yeah, so in short, to summarize a little bit what we're building, I don't know if you're all familiar with the Maslow pyramid, but the Maslow pyramid is this idea to that humans, in order to be fulfilled, they need to have all of these physiological needs met. And we kind of added a layer to that, which is before we even think about housing and food and water, in order for any human or any species on this planet to thrive, well, you need to have a healthy nature. You need to have water, you need to have healthy soils, and you need to have biodiversity. Without those things, there is no civilization, there is no life. And so we kind of want to add this bottom layer to the pyramid where we ensure that there's a healthy, thriving ecosystem that we sit within. And then we can take it to the next level, which is to build healthy infrastructure for humans to live in, to work in, to play in. And then we can think about what does it actually mean to live in community? What kind of experiences do we want to be? And what does education mean? I think education has been something very static in the past and very indoctrinating. And I think that's rapidly changing. And I think this type of solar punk settlement is really a space where education can be reinvented. And of course, on top of that, play is very important. We want to have fun in this process of creating a new civilization and creating new living environments. And purpose, I think the restoration of nature and creating a healthy nature can bring back a sense of purpose to so many people that feel disillusioned with the current society and don't really feel like they have the sort of purpose in this world. So it's this idea of how can we become a keystone species and leave a positive trace on nature. So yeah, I think I'll end it here. And Tobias.
All good, Sam. Thank you for the presentation. I actually just meant to put a clapping emoji.
Okay. How are you doing? Good to see you.
Yeah, good. Thank you. Good to see you too.
So yeah, I mean, this was what I wanted to share today, and I'm super happy if any one of you has interest in any of the specific things that I mentioned. Like we have a live operational DAO and a token and all of that infrastructure. And so I'm happy to, dive into some of the toolings. I don't know if some of you are maybe building solarpunk spaces, or maybe you're just curious about DAO systems and how that relates in real life and so on. So happy to dive a bit further or to give a demo of any of the pieces that seems interesting to you. PDX DAO, go ahead.
Yeah, I would, of course, love to get into seeing how you distributed the token, how you're seeing engagement with the token. Yeah, I mean, it's very interesting to me to think that the token will, I mean, I could see demand already increase, but you also have the bonding curve. I don't know, do you have, yeah, do you mind sharing a screen and walking us through a little bit?
Yeah. Do you want to finish? I didn't really catch the second part of the question, but I can show you. I can walk you through how we did the token distribution.
Maybe if we have time, I mean, if you have time, maybe the tokenomics of how you launch the token, and then how, and then the actual mechanics of how you're using the token for governance, just so that everyone here can kind of just see how that works. Thank you.
Yeah. So, so what is a token? The token is simply a unit of accounting within our village to reward folks who have contributed certain resources to the project. And so those resources can be, it can be work, it can be financial capital, it can be all of these kind of things. And so the whole point is to kind of just to reward the right types of capital to come into the project, and to have like a very tangible way to do that. And so first of all, the way that we structured it was out of the total 15,800 tokens that I was mentioning earlier. So that's a total supply, but then we are reserving 20% of that in a sweat reserve, which means that those are 20% of the project tokens that will be distributed for work done in the project. And so actually, when we calculated the token price, counted that 20%. So actually, that means that we can still raise the full amount that we are required, while still preserving 20% of the tokens for sweat. And then, I mean, the way that we got started was initially it was just a spreadsheet. So I can share a little bit here what it looks like, but it was quite simple. Basically, every expense from the first days that we started the village, it's all been accounted for. It's all in our ledger. You can see all the different things that we're purchasing, and also you can see like investments that have been made, or when people have done work on the project. And so yeah, so all of that basically got tracked, and so eventually we ended up a couple of years down the road with a spreadsheet, with a ledger, with what everyone contributed, where there had been a fair retribution of the value put in, whether that was financial value or work value. And so we had a spreadsheet with a total number of tokens for each person, and then all of that could then go into our actual ledger, which is on chain, which I can actually also share. Just so you get an idea what that looks like. So basically, once it goes on chain, what it means is it's a spreadsheet that you saw. It's quite similar, but then it goes into a blockchain, which means that it's publicly available for everyone to see, and the tokens get distributed. And you can see we currently have, where am I showing? There's some, I can't access the page for some reason, but yeah, so basically once it goes into the blockchain, we have this big public ledger, which is hosted on public infrastructure. You can trust that the data will be there immutably. And we currently have 94 people who hold the TDF token. And so that's what you can see here. You can see our current total supply of 5,700 TDF tokens. And then every time someone books, basically what they do is they lock a certain number of tokens for a certain period of time, which is 1 year in our case. And yeah, I mean, that's kind of it's set up. Did you have more specific questions around token allocation or?
I think that makes a lot of sense. Thank you. Do you use the token for snapshot governance?
Yes. So I guess I can also show that. But yeah, so then basically in snapshot, if you go there, so in snapshot, then you can see the different proposals that have come through. And yeah, and so basically in snapshot, what comes out is like the final stage of a proposal. So generally, these ideas will have been debated internally with the members that are actually contributing to the development. And then basically we put a proposal out when there's like a big change to the game, to the strategy, to what we are building. And so we kind of lay out what like budgets and decision making and like kind of changes to the game through this. Elizabeth, you had a question.
I do. I would love to hear a little bit about sort of the tangible aspects of the project. How much land do you have? How long you've had it? And how this model is, how well it's being adopted? How are people adapting to it? Yeah, those kinds of sort of practical.
Sure. So the land is basically it's an old chicken farm in rural Alentejo, an hour and a half south, 30 minutes to the ocean, and it's well, it's two properties. One is just the chicken farm itself. So that was I think 6,000 square meters of land with 1,500 square meters of factory on it. And so that's a main building. That's a main like real estate development where we are reconstructing all of that. And the second property is a 25 hectares of land right next to it that we have the option to buy. So actually we haven't executed that option yet, but we're already leasing five hectares out of that. And so that's why we started growing a food forest, reforesting and all of that. So yeah, and so basically in the co-living development, which is the old factory, we're going to be able to house around 30 people or so. And in total, the whole village will be able to home around 100 people or 120, something like that eventually, with the co-housing. And your second question around adoption, well, I mean, it's last year was quite difficult for us, to be honest. That's when we launched our token. It was the depth of the crypto market, and you know, it's difficult. It's not something easy to just come up with this new model and be like, hey, this is a new reality. Now we're just gonna have some crypto token, and that's how you're gonna get access to your regenerative village. Of course, it's gonna take a long time, and I think there's a big part in like education around that. What I can say is that people don't just buy the token because they're, well, some people buy the token because they just like the idea and just want to support. But I think there's like a real connection that we have with the people who come and stay with us. Like we had about 1,500 people visit over the last 4 years. And those people build real connection to the place and to the people. And so, those people have to feel like they have enough trust in the project, and they have to feel like they want to for a long term, because it's not like you can just buy the token and sell it tomorrow, because it is locked initially. So I think once we're going to get out of that phase where you have this locking period, it is probably also going to start to be more volatile. and you're probably gonna see more and more people like sort of want to buy in. But for now, we've really designed it to be like anti-speculative, basically. So it's really not designed to just like get like crypto whales to come and make a quick buck out of speculating on it. It's really designed for more like a long-term exit to community strategy where people can little by little feel more confident, buy more tokens, be more part of the project, have more stake and more time in the project. And yeah, and basically what we did between last year and this year is we shifted the strategy a little bit from raising the full 3.5 million just from token sales, which didn't work out, at least in this round. I think maybe in a few years, you know, other projects will be able to pull that off, but for us, we didn't succeed in that. But so what we did now is to go back to, okay, we're going to go a bit back a few steps and get a little bit more traditional sources of funding. So right now we are waiting on an answer for a big EU grant, which will be complemented with some private loans, which we already secured. So basically, if everything goes well, if we get this grant, fingers crossed, then we'll know in a couple of weeks. And then basically the whole co-living development is already funded. And now all the token sale that will come is kind of just supplementary, which enable us to pay back the loans, for example. And it's more of a way for the community to little by little become engaged with the project. So yeah, I think you kind of need this transition vehicle, which traditional finance has been pretty good at. Like you have bridge loans for construction, you have mortgages, all these kind of things. And just considering the cost of real estate these days, it's quite hard to just raise a whole amount just from like this very novel financial vehicle, but rather having more like traditional streams of funding to actually build the project, and then having these novel forms of governance and more ways for community to actually have a mechanism to coordinate and to decide on how the project grows over time. That's more the strategy, and I think so far that's working quite well. So let's ask me again in a year how it's going, but so far we're starting to see quite some adoption, and just people who come, I mean, they love the project, and that's why they're buying tokens. It's not like they're just buying tokens because maybe the project will explode in value. They're really like seeing the value for their own eyes, and with like they're buying out of a desire to belong and to be there. So that's very healthy, actually.
Yeah. And what's your timeline to get to today? Like, how long have you been sort of designing it, and when did you first purchase the chicken farm? And yeah.
So we purchased CDF almost 4 years ago. We found the property in September 2020, and then it was like 6 months to sign the contract and get the different things. And so it's been a bit over 3 years that we are actually open and operational, and that we've been taking volunteers and residents and so on. And yeah, but I mean, most of that doesn't really have anything to do with crypto and so on. And yeah, and we're still like in the final stages of like planning, permissioning with the Portuguese authorities and all of that. So I mean, creating a village just takes a long time, and you should always count on being at least 7 years, like just to launch the project. Like same thing with any like type of regenerative farm and so on. So it really is like a long-term mindset that you have to have going into it. And what I will say is like around the whole like technology stack that we created and the whole like legal infrastructure, like we had to invest a lot of money and time and effort and a lot of burnouts and everything else in between too, and tears. But it is getting easier for the next generations, because now everything that we created, anyone else can take it as a blueprint and replicate it. And we created it in a way where the legal infrastructure can be replicated. We can literally launch a token tomorrow anywhere in the world. We have the infrastructure for it. And so for us to launch another village, it's like super quick. There's a process to be part of us. When I say us here, it's OASA. OASA is a network of villages that we are establishing. And it's also a land conservation network, which comes with its own set of principles and rules and so on how to do the land regeneration. And some of the requirements in order to join OASA is, for example, first of all, to commit your lands to OASA, to the nonprofit, but also to have the people who would be stewarding this new project to actually have gone through an existing OASA project and learned there and steward, to really learn, all the intricacies of having a Web3 village. But the technology itself, this is in its own entity called Closer. And Closer is already operational on 4 different communities. There's more space in Berlin, and Leo's Labs, which is a pop-up project in Poland, leveraging it. And Closer is more flexible to interpretation. So any community can deploy the technology stacks that we created through Closer. And so that means that you can distribute access and governance on-chain for much lower cost than what we had, because we spent over 100,000, actually over 150,000 so far on software development. Now that means that any community in the world can use the same tech stack as we have, and legally as well. Instead of spending 50K like we did, I think you can probably get away with it 10K today.
Thank you.
Yeah. Eve, did you have a question? Was that you?
Yes, I was going to ask you about your vision for OASA. You pretty much answered it, but then I also just wanted to add on to what Sam is saying about the adoption in the community. When I've been at TDF, Sam has been side by side with me in the kitchen, cooking and cleaning. So Sam, as a founder, is really invested in the project, and what he said is true, that there's a really special energy at TDF and people find inspiration there. And you can do whatever you want. You can build whatever you want. You can create whatever you want. And they really mean that. And it's beautiful to see how the community comes together to support each other's visions. So yeah, it's a really special place. And I think that your leadership, Sam, has a lot to do with that. So thank you.
Thank you so much. And yeah, I hope to see you again very soon at TDF. Diogo, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Sam, for this presentation. It's really inspiring, and you learn a lot by your experience. I'm curious that you share so much of your online agenda of what you've done and all that. How is the seasonal calendar and the planning, the cycles, and how is that happening in TDF? How is that influencing TDF agenda? You guys are in the summer now. How is it? How are the activities there now?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, we used to have like seasons every 3 months with a team of stewards kind of running the project, and then events and so on. Now we've been shifting a little bit to having just more like 2 seasons per year. So actually right now we're closed because it's really hot in Portugal, and we learned last year that it wasn't really worth it, and it's really healthy for the team to take a bit of a break and go on adventures. So I'm actually spending my summer in Sweden, and then I'll be back at the end of August for the next season, and then we're running from September to December. And we're running another stewardship program, and this year it's much more educational. So actually we're inviting anyone that wants to learn to run and build a cutting-edge Web3 regenerative village to come and do it with us, and to actually do like a 12-week program where every week we have like different topics. And I think that's working really well. Like this kind of 2 season, at least for now, is a build period, because the main reason why we're closed now in the summer is also because we just don't have the infrastructure for it. Like our pool is not ready, lake is not filled yet, and we don't have an air-conditioned building yet, and it is very hot in Alentejo. So we would rather have like very livable conditions that just easy on ourselves. So yeah, so in the future though, once it's like fully operational, I mean, we're going to be obviously open all year round. and we're also shifting into having both like those seasonal people, like maybe you have a team of stewards every 3 months that will come for this educational program. But on top of that, you also have residents who come for like maybe a month, and you have volunteers who come for 2 weeks or more. But then you also have full-time residents, people who live in the project. So now we are like growing the team, and we're gonna have like 6-7 people full-time in the project, and those people are like living there and working on the project, taking care of like we have the land managers, and basically we have the different areas which are basically full-time in the project. And then on top of that, once we actually get to like building the co-housing infrastructure, then we're gonna have families living there full-time, and so on and so on. So then you're kind of gonna have all the different ranges of participation, and I think that's actually also very healthy. Is that it's not just 30 people who are just like together all time 24/7 for the whole year. And it's not either just like a hostel with people coming and going every day. It's like we're trying to cater to have a bit of both. So you have the consistency of having people who are regularly on the ground and who actually call TDF their home and who can maintain the culture and these kind of things, along with bringing a fresh air and having interesting people coming through and bringing new ideas and so on. So yeah, that's kind of where we are.
Makes total sense. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so very much. I will probably be watching this again, zooming in on all those charts and spreadsheets. Really excited. I'm going to end the recording. And if anyone would like to stay for a little bit, I'll hold the space open so we can make friends.
Yeah, and thank you so much, everyone, for participating, and yeah, for I guess just having an interest in this. Like, we're creating something new, and I think we're very much on the frontier edge of that specific intersection of nature, technology, and community. But also, no one's hold all the solutions, and we want this to be a commons, and we want this to be co-created, and we're inviting everyone to come spend some time and come figure it out together. So yeah, and I do hope to see many more traditional dream factories flourish around the world and use similar systems and creating this network of spaces that we can call homes that actually leave a positive trace on our nature and our planet.
Are you in a existing local village community? Are you within a village, or are you remote?
Right now, I'm with my family in Denmark, but otherwise, I live full time at TDF. Yes.
Well, the project itself is the project in an existing village, or is it rural, remote land?
Okay. Sorry, I misunderstood your question. Yes, we are. Basically, we are like just on the outskirts of a village, so it's like 5 minutes walk from TDF to the center of the small village of Abella. It's like 400 people living there, and it's like traditional Portuguese village, very cute little communist town, and yeah. So yeah, we do have this close integration with the locals, and we want to keep it that way. Like, we didn't want to be like a secluded bubble, but rather trying to be like an open playground.
Yeah. Have you been well received by the locals?
Yeah, surprisingly well. It's like the space itself had a history of hosting town parties and stuff like that, because woman who owned it, she's a daughter of the man who built it in 1970, and she wasn't using it. Well, the chicken farm got abandoned about 15 years ago, and so then it had only been used for town parties. So that's kind of the history of the space, and so we kind of maintain that, and we host town parties once in a while. We host like outdoor movie nights sometimes, And yeah, we have locals coming pretty much every day to visit and hang out and give us advice or give us some lemons if they have too many or whatever it is. So yeah, I mean, there's a little bit of a cultural and language barrier. It's not that easy to go from super modern global citizen, digital nomad, entrepreneurs, AI, and blockchain engineers to like old school, local Portuguese rural countryside. But yeah, there's also some beauty in that.
I'm working on a eco village in Uganda. I wonder if you'd be interested in getting on a call and talking with the principals there, because it's kind of in the same vein. They've been going for 7 years, but they haven't adopted Web3 yet, but are talking about it.
Yeah, for sure. Feel free. You can send me an email or just put it in the chat.
Thank you.
I'm happy to have a little call.
Excellent. Thank you.
And if you want to be in touch with the project, I also just put the link to the website. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, to join the network, OASO network, and how do we do it? And do we need to have this co-living perspective, or I think it fits for places that host visitors and that book stays. They offer experiences, but they don't offer, living, co-living. I think it also fits the model of TDF as it fits for this context.
Sorry, I missed a little bit part of the question. You're saying if it's not co-living, but if it's what?
Yeah, like, for example, we have this small land, and we offer stays through Airbnb and experiences in food forests. So, but it's too small, so we're not able to have more houses in there. So, but I think it's possible to also, have a model like a bonding curve in the token launch, because there are the states, just like in your case, you took this spending the night, the stays as a measurement that, like, taking, for example, the costs of keeping the place, keeping the housing, the place to stay, and divide that by the number of nights and launch a token from that. So, but without the long-term, sharing, co-living purpose. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I guess you'd have to ask yourself, why would you want to do that? Like, the reason to do it is mainly because you want to decentralize access and the governance of that space to a community of people. So if you're doing it because you want to share it with 10, 20 people, whatever, however small you want it to be, then yeah, that can work. If you're doing it because you just want to sell some tokens to something, then it might be a little bit different. And the reason why our token works also from like a legal standpoint is that what we are selling is access rights to the village. So by buying the token, you get this perpetual right to live there. But we're not providing any like financial rewards and stuff like that. So if you wanted to build more like a business type model where you are maybe providing a financial return to those that are buying the token, then it's a little bit of a different model, and you'd have to do a bit of research there. But probably going the whole Web3 route for that would just complicate things and wouldn't really be worth it. But like on the basic requirements to become an OASA village is, well, first of all, to put the land into the OASA Commons, so to put the land into an entity that's owned by the OASA Association. So that is quite like a strong requirement, and there might be some, we haven't done it yet, so I mean, we're still defining what the process would be, but there might be like a minimum amount of size and so on, because we are targeting to eventually, we want to hold 100,000 hectares in this conservation. And also the other part that I mentioned earlier as well is we want the founders of such spaces to have gone through our stewardship program to really be able to understand the intricacies of building Web3 villages and to practice the governance and practice the Web3 and practice the permaculture and all the other aspects that kind of go into this. So yeah, those would be the main kind of requirements to do an OASA project.
Yeah. It's, I see. Maybe there is no shared governance in the land as a co-living thing, but I would like to see shared governance in the supply chains being produced in their land. You know, like if we're planting food, we will need to process that harvest, make it last longer, make it suitable to distribute and stuff like that. And we need investments. And maybe these token holders could, we could add this, the cost of this processing facilities and all that to the cost of the token, to the and have full ownership and governance of this supply chains, not of the land itself as a living place, like to stay, to build houses and move with the family, but owning this production, this food park production in those terms, having participation there, stewarding there. And it's a very interesting model. So it's just something
that feel free to send me an email with the details of your project, and I can take a quick look and see what I think. I do think that generally, especially for small projects, Web3 just adds quite a bit of a layer of complexity that you have to be aware of. And so I wouldn't necessarily recommend it to just anyone. Like there's cases where it actually makes sense and where, like there's beautiful things that can emerge from it. I believe that's why I'm doing it. But there is also like a certain layer of complexity and so on that, if you're trying to be like a small scale farmer and offer like some stays and stuff like that, like it might not really be worth it for you. But feel free to shoot an email with what you're thinking, and and we can take a look.
Thank you. Do you have any contact with Tamara at all, which is nearby you?
Yes. They're friends. I've actually only been once myself, but we did have some of the facilitators at different events that we hosted. So yeah, we do have some bridges, and we do want to just build more bridges with all these type of spaces in the future. And I mean, we have been doing that as well, and we do have a dream of building a green corridor one day all the way down to Tamara from where we are, which is about 30 kilometers.
Nice. Great. Well, thank you very much. It was excellent. I will reach out to you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And if there's no further question, I think we can probably wrap it up here.
Thank you.
I've got one question actually. Thank you for the presentation. Really nice. I was wondering if you saw any application of this the methods in urban contexts.
Yeah, for sure. So I mentioned a space that we just onboarded into our platform, which is called MOS. It's a quite large, like, community space, co-living development in Berlin, in Tower Park. It's mos.gartner. I'll put it in the chat as well. So they literally implemented our model. They don't have a token yet, but we're trying to support them to be ready to be able to launch a token and to, I mean, the whole point of this token would be to create the first free house in Berlin. So creating a house that actually owns itself. So that is part of a commons, where the community can gain an access and a governance to that. So yeah, I mean, it's definitely very usable in urban settings as well. Within our OASA network, like, we were kind of more targeting the more nature-based solutions and more trying to provide like land conservation and to leverage villages as a way to actually conserve land. So we're not necessarily gonna embed urban things in the OASA network directly, but the technology is like available and can be used, and it is being used already.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. I think we will shut it down. This was excellent. Appreciate you.
Thank you so much. See you around soon.
Thank you.
GM.
Bye-bye.
Ciao, ciao.
Bye bye. Thank you.